Hello, welcome to Frequency Bone Music Connection, and this is the fall edition, and this is video 3 of the series, which is inside of the series, and it's the Ask Me Anything. And today I'm going to look at a question. Let me get it exactly right, so we need some specs. This question is from John. And he says, how do you separate yourself from the constant change in playing style that we hear and monotony of which it is played? That is to say, we all expect bolero to sound exactly like this, or tuba mirum like that. How can we promote a different approach to these auditions that still fits within the appropriate box? All these questions that I've gotten, you'll see, they get right in there. They get right in there in the territory they're talking about. And a lot of them are asking about, where's the mind need to be? How can we really be ourselves in the midst of many things? What happens if we feel like we're losing that sense of self? What if we can't play it exactly like, the requirements are? Of course, these are very important questions, I think, that we can open up the territory with. And one of the things I think is important to realize is that music is a living thing. Life is alive. And if you're thinking your music is some sterile type of science, there is science involved. That's a big subject in itself, science. People are arguing these days about what science is, okay? Science, for me, and I don't think I'm talking out of opinion because I really am not into that. There's humans looking at the natural laws and then trying to see how it fits together, and they discover this, oh wow, and then they can use that for their daily life. They can create a fire, okay? This thing called a wheel was created. That's going to help in moving things. I think I'm always probably going to start off with some of this because it's so important as a mindset. So, given that we live in a changing environment, there's always conditions, right? Inside and outside of us. How are we going to be fluid in dealing with that reality? What attitudes, what behaviors do we need to take on to actually deal with that? Now, this gets very specific, obviously, in terms of someone interested in an orchestral career, just not orchestral. For the military bands, people have to take auditions. To freelance in a town, people hear you. That can be your audition. Sometimes they want to hear separate things, a separate audition. You audition for this opera company, that ballet company, this particular regional orchestra, other orchestras, other bands, chamber music groups. Okay, so auditions. It sounds like an audit. Right? Well, I did it again. One moment, I'm sure you didn't notice, but you know what? You're going to notice me doing this, but I'm going to hide. Oh, my teeth. Well, they're not all my teeth. So, there isn't, I never thought of it in those terms before, that an audition is like an audit. in a certain kind of way. You're coming with your goods, and they're making a checklist and seeing what adds up. And does it match what they want? And if not, you can be either in or out. The penalty is, of course, is that you had to pay a lot of money maybe to go get on an airplane and stay in a hotel and, put in a lot of time and emotional cost and mental cost. But you can always learn from it. But more to the core of what this is asking, we have to look at a couple things in this question, okay? And one of them is there's a change of playing style throughout the ages. Because John was saying, how do you separate yourself from the constant change in playing style that we hear? And then he added a personal thing, and sometimes the monotony in which it's played. Now you can apply that monotony to any style. If you can, that person was trained here. I could tell people who went to school in Chicago years ago, okay? You know why? There was a certain characteristic sound, but even more than that, there was a certain really nice evenness, and their rhythm never rushed. There's something about rushing, and I hear this with other people. I heard it at Juilliard. I heard it, and you think, well, why would anyone want to rush? So why are you making a big thing? You could tell because they didn't rush. I'll tell you why. Because there's an energetic component that I sense when someone says, I can't rush. That becomes a part of the frequency in which their music is created. Now, if that is a law in them, they're missing a spectrum of metronomic time possibility even. And that gets into the box. So just go with me here. The box, there's many types of boxes. Let's take the metronome box, the rhythm box. Let's take the intonation box. Let's take the accepted timbre box. And that's what he means. There's all these little boxes. Well, guess what? You have to find room in those teeny little boxes. And what that does, you don't have to worry about separating yourself in a certain kind of way. You just have to find the means and ways of finding space. There's always space. There's always space. That is science. For example, they can take something and keep cutting it and keep cutting it and keep cutting it. And sometimes, they cut an atom, they get a boom. But the actual, with matter, you can keep cutting it and cutting it and cutting it and cutting it. There's always space. It's just sometimes it's really small. Which talks about a growth in being subtle. Which gets interesting. We want to be accepted. So how can we be accepted and then be slightly subtle about, other things about us that maybe aren't acceptable to a certain group of people? For example, I like being along in this club, but, I can't totally be myself, but I'm going to try to present myself in a way that I appear to be a part of it. I kind of gave up on that a long time ago. That doesn't mean I don't want to be respectful. I'm not saying I was perfect in that department, especially when I was younger. Well, it's just that I could maybe come off as, that person's in a mood today, and what I was trying to do was isolate myself so I didn't have to deal with certain kinds of things. All right? So it's not like I was doing anything that horrid. But these are little things that go on inside of us, don't they? don't they? So we can take these same things and put it inside of what we're talking about, the intonation box, the accepted timbre box, the where is a good breath box. Where do we, what are exact dotted eighth sixteenths? Like I said, is the music governing you, or is this idea of this box governing you? Which can come in the form of what you were taught, what you're surrounded by, your influence in the general environment that you're in, the recordings that you hear. They can create impressions, and those impressions, believe it or not, can become a little box inside of you. Just like not wanting to give up your favorite recording. Right? Took me a long time to hear anyone else play the Mozart horn concertos besides Dennis Brain. And I realized years later, it took a while, that's ridiculous. There's many different ways to play the Mozart horn concerto. But it's fascinating, our first impressions and the impression that they make. So sometimes our impressions are etched inside of cement, right? They take longer to get rid of. Then as you become a little bit more open and understand, wait, something gets into one person, it might come out with a slightly different thing because of what it does to them. Whether the composer would like it or not, who knows sometimes, right? Or better said, what wrote the music? Would it like the interpretation, meaning the spirit or essence of the music? Would it feel that it's in sympathetic resonance with the original intention? Now, do you have to know all this before taking an audition? I don't know. There might be people who might find it useful. Others might say that old phrase, just tell me how to do it. Well, no. How do I know what you need? I'd have to work with you and go on a journey with you and say, hey, let's figure some of this out. What does it need? What do you need? What does the music need? What does the job need? And then you kind of have a negotiation between what you think this particular job needs from what you've heard, okay? What the particular piece requires in terms of what it does, what it's about. And then there's you. What can you do and not do? This is not the realm of complication. This is the realm of interconnectedness, getting into certain kinds of things so we can actually try to fit into something that maybe, frankly, sometimes doesn't feel natural. And that's just certain circumstances are going to be like that. So the question is very to the point that I think a lot of people have trouble. Here's the box, basically. You need to play in tune according to the standard intonation of the orchestra and your little practice with the tuning device. And the metronome practice, even though now they're just smiley. I don't know, that's the intonation one that's a smiley face. I don't know, they probably have a smiley face metronome too. And so you're going to have it become very mechanical. Metronome, tuning device, recording yourself. So you're not moving around too much when you're playing, and you're just moving the right amount. Oy vey. I never recorded myself in terms of video when I was playing. I didn't want to see it. It settled down over time. And that was useful most of the time. So, the changing styles, because styles can change, maybe every 10 years, maybe certain ones last for 20 or 30, but times and fashions change. So how do you keep up with them? First of all, you have to build your relationship with the music. Number one. You have to build your personal relationship with the music. Once you do that, it's important to find, okay, here's bolero. And I was thinking, well, I could play different ways of bolero for you. And I thought, you know what? You want to hear one of the ways I played it? It's on YouTube from 1997, with the pops. Okay? You can get an idea. Basically, what I feel about it is there. You can always go. Basically, there's some good things. A lot of people seem to like it a lot. And, for example, I didn't want to play it because you can hear that one. That might not be the way I'd play it today. All right? Interpretively even. Might be close to it, though. But this is a process for you to discover. You can Google how many boleros now? God knows how many. People playing it in a concert, or they're, close to you. Meaning that they're, like I am, they recorded it on their own video. And you can hear it. They talk about it and how to, their own ways of going at it, which is good. It'll give you ideas. You still have to make your own relationship with the music, what that piece, just not the trombone solo, what it's doing. And just kind of have, and then all the stuff over the top of that. And then there's this continuum. What does it do to you? This crescendo of a piece, which Ravel didn't really like too much, but of course it became his popular piece because everyone can tap their foot to it. And then the Mozart Requiem. He was using those as examples. Well, I had an experience with the Mozart Requiem once with Christopher Hogwood, who was known for conducting, earlier music. And he said, that's supposed to be a trumpet. You're not supposed to be a singer. So he had me go, don, don, ding, ding, don, don, don. And that tempo. It does say cut time on the part. So he really had a two feel. Don, dee, 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 da, 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 dee, dee, dee. Don, ding, don, 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 don. Dun, dun. The students wouldn't even look at me after the concert. Said, hey, that wasn't necessarily my interpretation, but I understood what he meant. We're just dying to be singers every minute. If you want a job in this country or around the world, I don't recommend playing it like the way I just did, like the way he wanted it, because it'll be too foreign for that particular circumstance. Let's face it, just be too foreign. Which brings up another point. You need to have an acceptable alignment. You have to be recognizable. No. All of us would be able to tell a human being walking down the street from a giraffe, right? Okay. But people wear different clothes. For example. And they're not all, male or female in different right? But you can tell it's all human. So the box on one level, right? This box we're talking about is very human made, and it can change throughout time. But rhythm, pitch, and timbre probably will be pretty stationary. However, the interpretation of how that rhythm is played might not be. There is a spectrum to rhythm. There is a spectrum to intonation. There is a spectrum to tone color. And as soon as we start thinking we have to walk on this little tightrope, well, guess what? You won't be yourself. You'll just be exuding fear. You have to get pretty masterful, and that's what people try to do, and some have become incredible masterful on that tightrope. So for those of us who aren't, okay, we can't throw our music out, because that music is going to give us the potency, the energy, and the focus to be able to be inside of the rhythm. You know, it's not like you're being slapped, you know. For example, it doesn't have to be thought of so stiff. You just have to be in that flow. And the conditions of an audition might throw you out of that flow, and believe me, I know that. So, you make a relationship with the music, personal. And then you think, oh, okay, I'm auditioning for this group. Okay, I have to have that rhythm, pitch, and timbre. But you don't have to purposely play rhythm slowly. And like I would always tell from early Chicago players, right, that rhythm was actually played slowly, slightly slower than the marked tempo. And so that was to make sure you could feel the stability and that you never rushed. However, I never warmed to it many times. Certain music, that worked, because that was the nature of the music, at least in how I felt about it and others felt about it. You know, who wants to just hear something, Hungarian march, that sounds like it's dragging? So you could play it at a slightly slower tempo, or even William Tell, but not the burn or the feeling of riding a horse. Even if nowadays they're playing it all long, you know, they're doing that. That's what I'm hearing. It's all smooth, it's all long, but you have to lose. You have to lose that? If you need to do that. If you're totally convinced it should be unbelievably long, with a clear front, I understand. But is it going to lose this? Is it just going to sound, what a polished William Tell? What the hell? That rhymed. A polished William Tell? That's a storm scene. Like hail falling. So, if you need to play a little longer, fine. But don't, in my view, you want to get past the people who are just doing all of it the same? Then you're a little out of the box. Within the box is going to be, I'm going to put some hail on it. I'm going to make sure it has direction. Just not dee da 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 dee dum dum, dee da 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 dee dum dum. And then those last few things, dee, you know, those held out notes. People get so relaxed sounding on. Has nothing to do with what's going on in the rest of the piece at that time. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Make a relationship with the piece. Know what it is about. If you can find out from the composers, you know, who's written things about it, and what it does to you internally, mind, body, all the different parts of you that are going to have a say if you let them. But if you just let this box is in your own box of what you think the box is, then we're going to have to use your little jack-in-a-box. Ding, 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 and then you need to pop out of the box because you just feel so stifled. So you need exact rhythm, consistent pitch, a timbre that's consistent up and down the instrument. You might have to use the instrument of the times, but then, for example, some people might like the change of not hearing bolero on a big instrument, and to bring in a smaller tenor, if that's what actually you need to be true to yourself, and then have the rest of it be in that rhythm, pitch, and timbre box that you have found the ways to play in that box. With maybe the rhythm needs to feel like it's moving ahead. And that's what I didn't like about everything being under tempo so it's solid. Well, not all music's cement. Like I was saying about impressions. You get more and more open, and the impressions that happen to you might feel like they're going through water so they don't stick, and sometimes through air. But you can access what you want, but they don't become a governing vice in you. Guess what? This doesn't happen overnight. Just like getting better endurance or any other technical aspect on your instrument doesn't happen overnight. You have to constantly connect to it. So, my feeling is if you do that, someone's going to say, oh, that is a specialness in it. That was more than just a polished performance or a polished car. It actually had life, a soul, character, personality. That's how you don't get trapped in that box and make it a prison. But if you never let yourself experiment, guess what? You're not going to find it. You'll be trapped in that box. Find a rhythm that feels good for you. And then if it needs to go a little faster, a little slower, then do that. But you need to start with your can-do points so you can acclimate your technique and your mind together. So let me just look at this question again. How can we promote a different approach to these auditions that still fits within the appropriate box? I hope I answered some of that. How about being yourself? But, I'm sure a lot of people would like to be themselves on the stage, but if people say, look, you need to wear this kind of tux or tails, people still manage to, but they're now all of a sudden going to change the color scheme. Okay? That's what it's like. You understand? There's certain rules maybe you're going to have to follow on the job, even down to what you wear and what you won't. But you can still, there's a little touch here and there that might be a bit different, but still acceptable. And that's what I'm saying here. And you go into the audition knowing you've made a personal connection with the rhythm, with the pitch, with the timbre. So it's musically governed. And the basics are there because they're going to want to hear that. For sure. But if you get absorbed too much on that, without integrating it with your music, you'll always feel divided. And you'll wonder why you can't get past a certain point. It might be some of that. And sometimes life tells us other things about that situation. And that's for another video. But I'd like to think that this helped a bit if you just keep following what I'm saying. You might need to break some of this video up into bits so you hear little parts of it at a time and think about it. Work with it. That's why I always say, for example, play those excerpts in many styles. Do Mozart Requiem like it's Dixie piece. so you can break out of your rut. Not that you'll play it that way in an audition or in a performance, so you can snap out of it. So you can go, wow, I can do anything I want. It's like silly putty. It's not ice. It's not cement. We're the ones that make it cement. And the box sometimes is presented pretty cement-like. Find the flow within the rhythm, within the intonation. Intonation's an interesting topic. They all are. When it's music governed, certain things happen. Happy experimenting. If you have even more thoughts on this that you'd like to bring up to me, even about this question or from the last video, please get in touch with me on Instagram at nbolt2, the number 2. Okay? And to thyself be true, no matter how big of a box might surround us. There's always space. Space, the final frontier. I don't know about the final one, but it's an important one.